Anger or righteous indignation? Lies or truth? Christian or Pharisee? Are you astounded at all the anger out there? Can you believe how many people can lie and not think a single thing of it? Some of you listening could maybe swear that you're Christian. Hopefully you are. My Bible says you'll know them by their fruit. Everyone has some kind of fruit. Is yours sweet or is it rotten? I was thinking about Jesus, and most Christians think of him as the sweet little baby Jesus in the manger, or the Jesus who would never get out of line or raise his voice, let alone his anger erupt. Well, he did, and the Bible says he never sinned. But those who came against him did sin, and most never knew it or would admit it. They're called Pharisees. Well, I guess they know now what's true and what's false, don't they? Jesus had one habit that just irritated the Pharisees to no end. He just wouldn't lie. He told so much truth, and listen, he wasn't always diplomatic when he spoke the truth. Sometimes he was just plain angry. He didn't sin with his anger. It's called righteous indignation. Like the time he saw the marketers selling their goods in his Father's place of worship. He didn't just politely ask them if they could, close up early, or could they possibly find another spot, perhaps outside the temple. No, he flat turned over the tables, and with a whip, he literally drove them out of the place of worship. Ever read that? Or what about Matthew chapter 23? Oh, it's my favorite chapter, where he told the Pharisees off and he called them names 16 times in one chapter. Ever read that? And he didn't mince words. He called them hypocrites, blind guides, fools, snakes, sons of vipers, on and on. He told them off. He was in their face and he didn't mince words. Yet he never sinned. Oops, I know of someone who does this. Yeah, he tweets all the time. And he tells way too much truth, and he angers the Pharisees and the hypocrites. Those people who don't know truth from a lie, or anger from righteous indignation. They can't tell the difference between the holy and the profane. They just don't get it. Now, why not? Well, many listening to me see truth, and they hear truth, and you recognize it. So why don't these people get it? Or do they? Here's why. You don't have to go any further than Romans chapter 1. God tells it like it is. He gave the Apostle Paul the clue as to why some people just can't see truth or prefer lies and deceit. Verse 18 tells us that evil men push away truth. The truth about God is known to them, it says, instinctively, for God has put this knowledge in their hearts. They chose not to admit it. It says, and then after a while, they begin to think up all these silly ideas of what God was like and what he wanted them to do. No, they knew, but they wouldn't admit it. Truth is irrelevant to some people. The result, listen to this. It says their foolish minds became dark and confused. Yeah. Claiming themselves to be wise, they became utter fools instead. So what did God do? God let them go ahead into every sort of sin because they deliberately chose to believe lies. God gave them up to do everything their evil minds could think of. And what was the result? Well, they became full of all kinds of wickedness, evil, greed, hate, envy, murder, fighting, lying, bitterness, gossip, backbiters, haters of God, insolent, proud braggarts. They tried to misunderstand. They broke their promises. They were heartless and without pity. Wow. Now let me give you an example. In John 8, chapter 1, it says Jesus began to teach the people in the temple courts. Now the teachers of the law and the Pharisees, here they came, and they brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group, and they said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. Now in the law of Moses, he commanded us to stone such a woman. Now what do you say?" Gee, I wonder how they caught her in adultery. Was she having sex in the open? Or were they sneaking around places familiar to them where she might go? Maybe because they also had been there at some previous time. Listen, this wasn't even about the woman or her sin of adultery. They were using the question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing Jesus. What did he do? He bent down, and Jesus began writing something on the ground with his finger, and they read it. I wonder if it was the names of some of the women they had adultery with. They kept questioning him. Yeah. And when he sat up, he said to them, well, let any one of you who is without sin, you be the first to throw a stone at her. And then he stooped down and he wrote some more on the ground. And they began to go away, one at a time. They didn't get their wish to trap him. That's what it was all about. Not her. We need to trap him. We need to get something on him. You know of anyone else this type of thing is happening to today? Pharisees trying one thing and then the next to try to trap a leader so they can get rid of him? Hello, what spirit's behind this action, this procedure? They wanted to blame Jesus for his decision either way. You see, if he said, no, don't stone her, then he dishonored the law, right? If he said, yes, stone her, now we've got proof he didn't believe in love and forgiveness. He was just talking about it. But he fooled them with his wisdom. He didn't go either way. His wisdom instead pointed a finger at them for their hatred, bitterness, hypocrisy, and jealousy. Yes, jealousy. When you bring it all down, it's all about jealousy. These Pharisees had spent years building their reputations so people from all over the world would come and bow to them in the marketplace and give them the seats of honor at the parties and the meetings. And for what? I mean, what did they do for the people to deserve all this glory? Well, the Bible says they were corrupt, heartless to widows. They stole people's houses. They laid tremendous burdens on them financially that they themselves didn't keep their own laws and rules. The burdens were only for the people. And then along comes Jesus, who had words of wisdom that put their top scholars to shame. He had to heal the sick. He had to deliver the poor from demons or torment. He set the mentally ill free. He spoke against needless regulations that the Pharisees had already placed on the people. And for this, they wanted him out. And they wanted him dead. What crime had he committed? None. They made up the crimes. Liars. No. Anyone? Do you know anyone who cuts our taxes instead of increasing them? Know anyone who creates more jobs, relieving burdens rather than increasing them? How about one? The Pharisees, let me put it this way, the Pharisees wanted a type of socialism where they were at the top. And they had all these little workers at the bottom doing all their dirty work while they got all the credit. Did Jesus collect all this respect through his healings and deliverance and good works and righteous words of teaching? Well, yes. You mean, didn't he want us to remember him by the little baby in the manger who made no waves for anybody? No. He showed them he wasn't a pushover by using his authority given him by his Father to set righteousness in the land. His Father, God. He came and exposed the swamp by telling them too much truth. They didn't have Twitter back then, but they did have the lying media, the fake news, who spread gossip and lies about Jesus so that eventually he would be out of the way. Then that way they could rule the people without all that truth. Well, eventually enough ignorant people believed the lies. The Pharisees had Jesus arrested. He went before Pilate, and when Pilate asked the people, "What do you want me to do with this man? I see no sin in him." Well, the crowd was filled with hecklers. And the hecklers who yelled the most and the loudest were obviously paid. It was a setup, just like the media and hecklers today. Pharisees scream because they're still babies and they do not desire to do right. The only thing they want is power. Things were so good, and then Jesus had to come to town and stir things up. Who does he think he is, touching lepers and healing them? Disgusting. Bringing the dead back to life again? How dare he one-up me by doing miracles? Why? I've been serving this temple for more than the years than he's ever been alive. If God needs a miracle worker, he can look my way. Oh. Those Pharisees, they didn't just want to be like Jesus. They wanted to be Jesus. And they couldn't figure out a way to do that. So they needed to impeach him. Oh, did I say impeach? Oh, well, you know what I mean. They wanted to get him out of the way. He was convicted of treason. And guess what? None of them were elected to take his place and do miracles, good works, and speak wise counsel to lead the people. Why? Couldn't God see I should be the one? Yes, they chose. They chose. And here's what God did do. It said God sent a powerful delusion so that they would believe lies. What do you believe? If Jesus made his point by mixing a little sarcasm and perhaps a little anger in his words and tossing it out to wake the people up, do you think God can send another ruler to use these very tactics to throw cold water in the faces of those who are asleep? You want my opinion? You know what? I shuddered in the past when I saw one of our leaders representing the greatest nation on earth dare to bow to another leader from another country, far less than ours. How humiliating that was. We do not apologize for our strength, and we do not cow down as a nation and pretend others are greater. Never. If you listening do not want righteousness in this land, and you are embarrassed to live here, please leave. Jesus made his point. Now, he made it not by weakness or lies or tricks. He was rejected by those who felt threatened and by those who wanted to put themselves above him. Listen, they were not above him. Learn to discern, not decide. There is a difference. God has finally placed strength in our land, and our leader is not a pushover. You don't like the words he chooses to use? The phrases? The put downs? Well, you wouldn't have liked Jesus either. Read Matthew chapter 23. Jesus put the Pharisees in their place. He called it like it is and was. And yes, he used some pretty strong words. But he accomplished what he came here for in spite of the opposition. Here's my opinion. I love the strength I see. Get on the right side of the tracks. Google the truth and stop believing all the rhetoric and, yes, the lies. You will be accountable. Let me sum this up. Jesus has power, favor, and wisdom. And someone else has power, favor, and wisdom. And they want it. The Pharisees. And they're trying to get it. They're trying to get favor by tricks, manipulation, and lies. They, the Pharisees, they've invited a spirit of jealousy to rule. Jealous of people who are rich, jealous of how they get things done for the people. If you're not already, I want to share this. You have a small window of time to get to the right side of the tracks. Anger? No. Righteous indignation. Lies? No. Truth. God will hold all of us responsible for truth. He's big on it. I pray you make the right decision. I'm Susan David, and I'm proud of our leadership. Please forward this message to someone you know.